Greetings, everyone. This is Jeff Wilkerson, professor of physics at Luther College, bringing you the next in our series of what to look for in the night sky. Now we're looking at the week of February 7th, 2022. So I've been apologizing in recent weeks for spending so much time looking at the planets and the moon, and so that's exactly what we're going to look at again this week. Just can't help ourselves. We're going to start in the morning sky. So pretty much all week for the week of the 7th and the week of the 14th. So for the next 2 weeks, I want you to go out and try to look for Mercury. So Mercury is hard to see, and it's challenging to see because it's always so close to the sun. It's not a very big planet, so it doesn't reflect a whole lot of light, and we have to look in the direction of the sun to be able to see it, and then there's the glow of the sun, of sunrise or sunset, that's always impairing our ability to see a faint object against a bright background. But what happens is this: Mercury's orbit is more eccentric than the orbits of all of the other planets. So Mercury's orbit, I've exaggerated it here, but Mercury's orbit is squished more than a typical orbit of a planet, so that it gets closer to the sun and further away from the sun than most planets do. The sun, this is one of Kepler's laws, okay, one of the early mathematical laws when we first started to understand. So once upon a time, we started to figure out that the universe might live by mathematical laws. And Johannes Kepler was really the one to propel us in this direction. And one of his laws was that the planets orbit the sun in elliptical orbits with the sun at one focus. The focal point, the focus point, is a particular mathematical point relative to that ellipse. So it's a way you define the shape of that ellipse is its eccentricity, how stretched it is, and those focal points are particular distances. We'll just do it. That's the major axis of the ellipse, and the focus lies on the major axis of the ellipse, and where it lies along the major axis of the ellipse, how close it is to the ends of the ellipse, depends on the eccentricity. It's closer to one end of the ellipse and much further from the other end of the ellipse, the more eccentric that the ellipse gets. The eccentricity can vary from 0 to 1, and Mercury's is pretty eccentric. All of that is to say that not every apparition, not every appearance of Mercury is equal in our eyes. So if Mercury's here, it's very close to the sun and almost impossible for us to see. It's not impossible, but for many of us mortals, those of us who don't have great horizons and don't have great vision for picking faint objects out for against bright backgrounds, this is a real challenge. Much easier over here. Okay, so it depends where we are relative to that eccentricity of Mercury tells us how good a particular appearance of Mercury is going to be. And this is one of the two best of 2022 coming up. This one is a pretty good one in the morning sky for the weeks of the 7th and the 14th. So what you want to do is you want to go out, and you've been tracking Mars, because I've been asking you to track Mars, so I know you've been doing it. You wouldn't not do it for me like that. So Mars is in Sagittarius, in the teapot asterism of Sagittarius. Go back and watch some of our other videos. It's moved a little bit relative to the top of the teapot of Sagittarius from when we talked about it last. Big bright orange Antares in the head of Scorpius. We've been watching that in the morning sky. And so you've got this bright orange Antares, bright Antares, bright red Mars. They're about 30 degrees apart, maybe 3 fist widths at arm's length for you there. And if you move on this direction 1.5 fist widths, so this direction, just keep going east. You're starting west, you go east from Antares to Mars. Antares, you got these sort of 4 stars that mark the head of the scorpion here. And then you go 30 degrees over to Mars, half that distance again, there's Mercury. If you've got a pair of binoculars, use your binoculars to help pull this out. But if you've got a good dark sky and a good eastern horizon, you very likely might be able to see Mercury without the binoculars right there. So give it a try. 30 degrees from Antares to Mars, half that distance again, you're going to have Mercury. Venus is shining brightly up here. Excuse me, inhaling chalk dust. About 7 degrees. So about half the distance between Mercury and Mars is the distance between Mars and Venus. So Venus is the biggest, brightest object in this part of the sky. You won't miss Venus. Venus is glowing very brightly up there. You see that distance, so you double that distance. It makes a triangle that looks something like that in the morning sky. So there's your your Mars to Venus to Mercury triangle. Give it a try. This is a great chance. If you've never seen Mercury, this is a great chance for you to go out and see Mercury because of this this sort of elongation, how far it is away from the sun on this particular. We're going to have a few coming up that aren't quite as good. Then we'll have one in the evening sky later in the year. So as we get into summer, we'll have Mercury appearing in the evening sky. That's actually a little bit better than this one in the morning, but this is a good one, and I really recommend it over the next 2 weeks is to give this a try. So that's your main task for the week. That's the main thing we want to talk about, is to think about seeing if we can find Mercury in the morning sky. But the moon's going to make a couple of interesting pairings with other objects, groupings with other objects in the evening sky. On Wednesday the 9th, the moon will be sitting in Taurus the bull between the V of the Hyades. The face of the bull is marked by this V, and you've got that bright orange Aldebaran. We've got this bright orange Aldebaran right there, Arabic, the eye of the bull, and that's the Hyades is that V. That's an open star cluster. There's another famous open star cluster up this direction that we see as a fuzzy patch, the Pleiades. And so we see the Pleiades as that little fuzzy patch above the Hyades. The moon's going to sit squarely between them. The moon's about 2/3 full at that time, sitting squarely between Aldebaran and the Hyades and the Pleiades in Taurus the bull. Taurus the bull sits above and just a little bit, so north and just a little bit west of Orion, if you know Orion out there. But go out and find the moon. Look for the Pleiades. Take your binoculars again. The moon will be washing this scene out a little bit, so you might not be able to see these things as easily. But identify the V of the Hyades and then look at the Pleiades star cluster. Use your binoculars as you need to. Now, 2 days later, on the evening, so this is the evening of the 9th. This was the morning, so you're going out and doing this. This part of the sky's up all night, so you can do this in the morning as well. So it would be the evening of the 9th into the morning of the 10th. Then on the evening of the 11th into the morning of the 12th, the moon will have moved into Gemini. Gemini is Castor and Pollux with a couple of strands of stars that stretch down this way. That's what Gemini more or less looks like. And so Castor and Pollux are the bright twin stars. The moon will be down here in the feet of Gemini on the evening of the 11th into the morning of the 12th. And it's sitting right next to a bright open star cluster, M35. It's a beautiful, rich open star cluster. Get your binoculars out. Look at the moon. See if you can see. It's just a couple of degrees. It's just a couple of finger widths away from the center of the moon. The moon's almost right on top of it. This is a pairing that you don't get very often. Now, unfortunately, the moon's pretty full by this point. I think it's 80% full by the time it gets there. And so the moon is going to be bright and washing out those stars. But those are big, bright stars, so my guess is you should be able to see them at least somewhat. It's not going to be as impressive as it would be if the moon were 40% full or 30% full instead of 80% full. But give it a try. Give it a try. That's what we're all about. Just give it a try. 2 nights later, the evening of the 13th into the morning of the 14th, which is when we'll be thinking about our next week of sky watching, the moon will have moved over here, and you will be in line with Castor and Pollux. So those are big, bright stars. The nearly full moon at that point, over 90% full at that point, will not wash out those bright stars. You'll be able to see bright Castor, bright Pollux, bright moon, worth watching on the evening of the 13th. So that's what we got for you. Definitely go out and try to find Mercury sometime in the next 2 weeks. You got 2 weeks for that. Go out and try to find Mercury in the morning sky, and then watch the moon move through Taurus, past the Pleiades and the Hyades, and then past bright open star cluster M35 in Gemini, and then make a nice grouping with Castor and Pollux in the top of Gemini later in the week. Good luck, everybody. I hope you have a great week. Thanks, as always, for watching, and we'll have more for you next time around.